out, Chuck!
That's a straight-up Clark Kent the Superman transformation. But his studying isn't just to make crazier hits. He's constantly blown players' minds for basically predicting the future.
You break the huddle, he comes down, he's like, watch the screen.
Mike! Screen!
He knew everything before it happened. Everything.
Trap! Trap! Pass, Thomas! Pass! Thomas! Draw!
I'm like, man, how in the world did you know they were going there?
Outside run!
It just really makes the game easy.
Knowing that many plays from that many teams doesn't even give you a high football IQ. Kuechly was actually just absurdly smart. But while he's the smartest player, the Colts are one of the smartest franchises. Cause no joke, decades ago, the Colts once pulled off a heist greater than Ocean's 11. See, before the Indianapolis Colts were the Indianapolis Colts, they were the Baltimore Colts. They had been there since 1953, so they were ingrained in Baltimore culture with their fans, with players like Johnny Unitas, and even 2 NFL championships in the 50s. But by the 80s, things had kinda gone south. Revenue was down, attendance was down, and the stadium was aging badly.
Irsay wanted us to pay for preseason games, 1 o'clock starts, improvements to Memorial Stadium. The legislature was about to use eminent domain to seize the club, so Irsay had to make a move.
If you love the Colts, why don't you treat me right?
But we found his lawyer in Indianapolis, Michael Chernoff.
Why is there so much secrecy about all of this? Why can't you comment?
No comment.
Well, the city and state did not care about treating him right. So while the government was figuring out how to take control of the team by force, Irsay just moved it. Straight up at 10 p.m. while Baltimore was sleeping, Irsay brought in a fleet of 18-wheeler moving trucks. Every desk, file, helmet, and piece of equipment they could find was put on the trucks and gone. By sunrise, the Colts were officially in Indianapolis with a brand new stadium, financial incentives, and a fresh start. Obviously, Baltimore wasn't happy.
I just can't believe this is happening.
The Colts had to sneak out of town at night. It degrades a great tradition of the city in football.
And I doubt if Robert Irsay realizes tonight the full impact or the extent of his sin in pulling away a football team that was a big part of the fiber of Baltimore.
Listen, those are all fair complaints, but if the government's breathing down your neck, I'd say a heist is probably the only way out. The fact they actually pulled this off makes it one of the smartest, coldest moves in NFL history. And yet, the Broncos had already one-upped them a year earlier. See, in 1983, the Baltimore Colts held the #1 draft pick and selected John Elway. There was just one problem.
I want to give myself the best chance to be the best quarterback that I could. And I looked at that organization and what they were doing, and I didn't think that was going to give me the best chance to show off my talent. Not show off my talents, but to win a Super Bowl and to win as a football team.
So if I was going to trade him, it was going to be for the greatest trade in the history of pro football.
When no one met the asking price, the Colts took Elway.
And on top of that, Elway also had a nuclear option to get what he wanted. He had a legitimate professional baseball career he was ready to pursue instead.
Baltimore selects quarterback John Elway of Stanford.
I went down and picked them. When I came back up, they were already talking about, look, we'll just leave here and go do what we want to do. So I knew it was going to be difficult to keep them from trading.
And while the Colts debated about trading Elway to avoid him dropping out entirely, the Broncos watched it all like hawks. They knew Baltimore owned the pick, but also knew Elway wouldn't play. And just days after the draft, Baltimore was so desperate to not waste their #1 pick, they dropped their asking price for Elway. And I'm talking like dropped it to the bottom of the barrel, because when the Broncos met the Colts, this is all they asked for.
He said, Chris Hinton, and he said Mark Herman, and #1 the next year. You know, I kept waiting to see what else it was, and he said, and I said, is that it? And he said, yeah, that's it.
That might be the craziest deal I've ever heard of. Genius move on Broncos' part to steal it for cheap, but they basically got a Lambo for the price of a Camry. But as crazy as that trade was, it's nothing compared to what the Cowboys did. Because in the 90s, the Cowboys pulled off the smartest, biggest trade in NFL history. And they basically had no other option but to shoot for the moon. Because the 1989 Cowboys sucked. It was like 1 in 15 type sucked. At that time, they had just hired a new coach too, Jimmy Johnson, who basically got the task of rebuilding a franchise from dust. Then, while on a jog with some of his assistant coaches, it struck him.
I said, what do we have that anybody wants? and we didn't have a very good team. We had one Pro Bowl player, that was Herschel Walker. I kind of just threw it out there, well, what if we traded Herschel Walker? And of course, all my offensive coaches got all irritated. They didn't like the idea at all.
He really spoke it into existence by just bringing it up. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the Browns called him asking for a trade for Herschel, and Jimmy knew he was onto something. See, Herschel Walker was a freak of nature as a running back. His stats were raw. The hype around him was off the charts. Even his workouts seemed superhuman.
Started doing about, sometimes 2,000 push-ups, 3,000 sit-ups, 1,500 pull-ups, dips or, 1,000 dips and, different things like that.
Yeah, so you get the idea of how most teams viewed him in terms of value. And Johnson played into that idea hard, and eventually.
And we'll just see if somebody wants to top this offer. As it turned out, I talked to Mike Lynn with the Minnesota Vikings, and he faxed me a proposal. I tweaked it a little bit, and we made history.
That's the understatement of the century. Minnesota basically thought they were just one superstar away from a Super Bowl. So trading 6, 7, 8 players for Walker was a stupidly easy decision. And also a stupid position. Because Minnesota didn't do the one thing you should always do when making a deal. Read the fine print. See, what the Vikings saw in the deal was Herschel Walker followed by a bunch of Cowboys backups. Rotational guys, people Johnson had no intention of keeping. But what they didn't know? Johnson had written a clause in the contract that said, if the Vikings cut any of those players, each one of those turned into an extra draft pick for Dallas. So
they end up with 9 NFL starters out of the 91-92 drafts. So 9 guys in 2 drafts sort of fast forward this organization from 1-15 to winning 3 Super Bowls in 4 years.
By the way, on top of that, their severance package for Herschel included $1.5 million in cash, a Mercedes, and a home in Minnesota. So even the player got a better deal than the Vikings, who got Walker and 0 Super Bowls. Yeah, I'd say that's the smartest moment in NFL history.